Hey, tonight we're going to talk about something incredible, what it was like to be one of Napoleon's soldiers during his conquest of Europe. Spoiler, it wasn't easy, but it sure was an adventure. You think your day was rough? Let me tell you about marching 40 miles with 60 pounds of gear on your back while hungry, exhausted and scared. If you're enjoying these bedtime stories about weird history, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you're listening from. Drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Is it actually bedtime? Now, find a cozy spot, take a slow, deep breath and let your body sink into comfort as we journey back in time together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in spring of 1805 in northern France. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, your stomach is already cramping from hunger, and the thin straw mattress you shared with another recruit has left bits of straw stuck to your hair and clothing. You blink away sleep, your eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through the barracks window. The wooden planks beneath your threadbare blanket creak as you shift your weight. Around you, dozens of other young men are stirring, coughing, muttering. The air smells of sweat, unwashed bodies, and the lingering scent of last night's watery soup. Your name is Jean Dupont, you're 19 years old, and 6 months ago you were working in your father's bakery in a small village near Lille. Then the conscription notice came. Your number was drawn, and now you belong to Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. You sit up, wincing as your feet touch the cold floor. Your new boots, the first real leather boots you've ever owned, sit beside your bed. They're stiff and already starting to rub blisters on your heels, but you're one of the lucky ones. Some of the men in your unit have boots with soles so thin they might as well be walking barefoot. The sergeant's voice booms through the barracks. Up, formation in 10 minutes. You scramble to dress, pulling on your white cotton shirt, blue wool trousers, and the short blue jacket with red piping that marks you as a fusilier in Napoleon's infantry. The material is rough against your skin, nothing like the soft clothes your mother used to make. Your fingers fumble with the brass buttons. 6 months ago, you could barely dress yourself in a soldier's uniform. Now you can do it half asleep. As you stand, you feel the weight of yesterday's march in your calves and lower back. 50 kilometers in one day. The sergeant said it was to build character. Your legs say it was torture. You strap on your equipment belt, feeling the familiar weight settle on your hips. Attached to it is your cartridge box containing carefully wrapped paper cartridges of powder and ball for your musket, your bayonet in its sheath, and a small leather pouch containing flint, steel and tinder for making fire. Around your chest goes the white crossbelt that supports the weight of your sword. Not a fancy officer's sword, but a short, practical infantry sword called a briquet. Last comes your charcot, the tall cylindrical hat that all French infantry wear. Yours has a brass plate on the front stamped with the number of your regiment. The 45th Line Infantry. A red and white pom-pom sits atop it, a splash of colour that helps officers identify your unit in the chaos of battle. Outside, the morning air is crisp and damp. Your breath forms small clouds as you hurry to your place in the formation. The drill yard is a sea of blue coats and white crossbelts as hundreds of soldiers line up in their companies. You find your place in the third rank of your company, standing shoulder to shoulder with men you've come to know better than your own brothers. On your right is Marcel, a farmer's son from Normandy, with hands like leather and a laugh that can be heard across the barracks. On your left is Pierre, a former student who can read and write and sometimes reads letters for the men who can't. Behind you stands Henri, barely 16 but who lied about his age to join up, dreaming of glory and adventure. The regiment's eagle is brought forward, the golden bird perched atop a staff draped with coloured flags. This isn't just a standard, it's the physical embodiment of your regiment's honour, presented by the Emperor himself. Men have died protecting these eagles, and you would too if called upon. The The colonel addresses the regiment, his voice carrying across the silent ranks. Men of the 45th, today we march to join the Grande Armée at Boulogne. The Emperor has plans for us. Great plans. Austria and Russia think to challenge France. We will show them the error of their ways. A cheer rises from 1,000 throats, yours among them. Despite your aching feet and empty stomach, you feel a surge of pride. You're part of something larger than yourself. The Grande Armée, the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who rose from nothing to become Emperor of the French. The colonel continues, we march in 1 hour, full packs, 25 leagues to cover before we rest. 25 leagues, about 75 kilometres. Your legs already protest at the thought, but you say nothing. Complaining is for civilians, not soldiers of the Emperor. Back in the barracks, you pack your haversack with your few possessions. A spare shirt, a pair of socks that your mother knitted, a wooden comb, a small tin cup, and a wooden spoon. On top goes your blanket, rolled tightly and strapped to the top of your pack. Your musket leans against your bunk, a Model 1777 flintlock, nearly as tall as you are. You check it carefully, making sure the flint is secure and the barrel is clean. This weapon will be your constant companion in the months to come, more intimate than any lover, more trusted than any friend. As you shoulder your pack and take up your musket, you realize that your entire life now fits on your back. Everything you own, you carry. It's a strange feeling, terrifying and liberating all at once. The regiment forms up on the road leading east, a long blue snake stretching into the distance. The drums begin to beat, setting the rhythm of your march. Left, right, left, right. Your feet move automatically, falling into the steady pace that you've drilled into your muscles over months of training. At first, the marching is almost pleasant. The morning is cool, your legs are fresh, and the rhythm of hundreds of feet striking the ground in unison creates a hypnotic effect. Men begin to sing, old folk songs mostly, with new lyrics about the emperor and glory and beautiful women waiting in far-off lands. You join in, your voice blending with the others. As I was walking down the street, a pretty girl I chanced to meet, she smiled at me, I smiled at her, and that's how all the trouble started. The ribald chorus makes you smile despite yourself. It reminds you that you're not alone in this. Every man around you is in the same situation, far from home, marching toward an uncertain future, but doing it together. By midday, the pleasant feeling is gone. The sun beats down and sweat runs freely down your back and chest. Your pack seems to have doubled in weight, the straps cutting into your shoulders. Your musket, once an extension of your arm, now feels like a lead weight that you shift from shoulder to shoulder, seeking relief that never comes. You reach a stream and the order comes to halt for a brief rest. Men rush to fill their canteens and splash water on their faces. You do the same, the cool water a momentary blessing on your hot skin. But all too soon the drums beat again and you're back on your feet, marching ever eastward. Hours blur together. The only constants are the road beneath your feet and the pain in your legs. Your world narrows to the few feet of dusty road directly in front of you and the back of the man ahead, 1 foot in front of the other. Left, right, left, right. Don't think about the distance. Don't think about tomorrow. Just the next step and the next and the next. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Still, you march. Darkness falls, and still you march. Men stumble in the darkness, cursing as they fall. You've been marching for 14 hours straight. Finally, the order comes to make camp. You're too exhausted to feel relief. Your body moves mechanically, setting up your bivouac by the dim light of campfires that spring up along the roadside. You're assigned to a group of 6 men, and together you put up a simple tent made from your combined shelter halves, small pieces of canvas that each soldier carries. Dinner is a meagre affair. Hard bread, a strip of tough salt pork, and water from your canteen. You eat mechanically, too tired to even taste the food. Around you, men collapse onto the ground, using their packs as pillows. Some are already snoring before they've finished chewing their last bite. As you lie down, every muscle in your body screaming in protest, you stare up at the stars visible through a gap in the tent. They're the same stars that shine over your village, over your family's bakery. Your mother might be looking at them right now, wondering where you are, if you're safe. You close your eyes, feeling the hard ground beneath your thin blanket. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, and the day after that, and after that, marching ever eastward toward Austria, toward Russia, toward whatever fate the Emperor has decreed for you. This is your life now. You are a soldier in Napoleon's Grande Armée. Sleep comes quickly, a merciful darkness that engulfs you completely. As your breathing slows and your consciousness begins to drift, you feel a strange sense of belonging. For all its hardships, this is your place now. These men are your brothers. This cause is your cause. In your dreams you see the Emperor himself, small in stature but somehow larger than life, riding along the column, his famous grey coat billowing behind him. He looks directly at you, and in that moment you understand why men willingly endure such hardship for him. There's something in those eyes, a vision of a world remade, of glory and purpose that transcends the pain of the march and the terror of battle. You dream of eagles soaring above battlefields, of flags waving in victory, of returning home someday with medals on your chest and stories that will make the village children gather around in awe. The hard ground seems to soften beneath you as exhaustion pulls you deeper into sleep. The sounds of the camp, men snoring, horses nickering, sentries calling to each other, fade into a gentle backdrop that cradles you like a lullaby. Tomorrow will bring more marching, more hunger, more pain. But tonight, under the vast canopy of stars, you rest like the dead, your body surrendering completely to the sweet oblivion of sleep. Your last conscious thought is wondering what adventures await you in the Emperor's service. Little do you know that you're about to become part of one of the greatest military campaigns in history, that your feet will carry you across Europe, that you'll witness both the height of glory and the depths of despair. But that's a story for another night. For now, you sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted soldier, your body recovering for the trials to come. The cold seeps through your threadbare blanket as dawn breaks over the hills of Moravia. Your breath forms small clouds that hang in the December air. It's been 4 months since you left France, 4 months of endless marching across Europe. Your boots, once stiff and new, are now worn and moulded to your feet like a second skin. Your uniform, once bright and crisp, is now faded and patched in several places. You're not in France anymore. You're near a place called Austerlitz, in what they tell you is the Austrian Empire. The date is December 1st, 1805, and tomorrow you'll fight in your first major battle. Marcel nudges you with his elbow as you both huddle around a small fire. They say the Russians have joined with the Austrians. 2 emperors against our one, he mutters, his normally cheerful face solemn in the flickering light. Our one is worth both of theirs, replies Pierre from across the flames, his breath visible in the cold air. Napoleon hasn't lost a battle yet. You nod, wanting to believe him. Over the past months, you've heard stories of Napoleon's previous victories. Marengo, Ulm, dozens of others. Names that meant nothing to you before have become like scripture to the veterans who recite them around campfires. The temperature drops as night deepens. You pull your greatcoat tighter around your shoulders, grateful for its heavy wool despite the lice that have made it their home. In the distance, you can see the enemy campfires dotting the Pratzen heights, hundreds of them, each representing dozens of Russian and Austrian soldiers. There must be thousands of them up there. The thought makes your stomach clench with fear. An officer passes by, his face haggard with exhaustion, but his eyes alert. "Small fires only, men. Keep them low. We want the enemy to think we're weak and frightened." "Aren't we?" whispers Henri, the young boy soldier, his face pale in the dim light. "We're the Grande Armée," you find yourself saying, with more confidence than you feel. "We don't get frightened." But that's a lie. You're terrified. Tomorrow you might die, or worse, be maimed for life. You've seen the veterans, missing arms and legs, begging on the streets back home. You've heard the screams of men in the field hospitals as surgeons work without anesthesia. Sleep comes in fits and starts, your dreams filled with the faces of your family back home, your mother kneading bread, your father stoking the bakery oven, your little sister chasing chickens in the yard. Will you ever see them again? You wake before dawn to the sound of drums beating assembly. The ground is covered in a thick fog that swirls around your ankles as you rise stiffly from your cold bed. Your joints ache from sleeping on the frozen ground, but there's no time to dwell on discomfort. All around you, the camp is coming alive. Men checking their muskets, fixing bayonets, filling canteens from water barrels, sergeants shouting orders, officers consulting maps by lantern light. The air smells of wood smoke, gunpowder, and fear. Your company forms up in the pre-dawn darkness. The colonel rides along the line, his horse's breath steaming in the cold air. "Men of the 45th, he calls, his voice carrying in the still morning. "Today we fight for France, for the Emperor, for glory. The enemy thinks us weak. They think us retreating. Let them think so until we strike. The Emperor himself has a plan. Trust in him. Follow your orders, and victory will be ours." A cheer rises from the ranks, and you find yourself joining in despite the fear that churns in your gut. There's something infectious about the confidence of the veterans around you, men who have fought and survived a dozen battles. As the eastern sky begins to lighten, revealing a landscape shrouded in dense fog, Napoleon himself rides past your position. Even in the dim light, you recognize him instantly. The small figure in the distinctive grey coat, the famous bicorn hat set at an angle on his head. He's surrounded by a glittering entourage of staff officers, but it's him your eyes are drawn to. "There he is," breathes Marcel beside you. "L'Empereur." Napoleon pauses, surveying your regiment with a steady gaze. For a brief moment you swear his eyes meet yours, and a strange calm settles over you. This man has led armies to victory across Europe. He rose from nothing to become Emperor of the French. If anyone can lead you through this day, it's him. The Emperor moves on, continuing his inspection of the troops. Behind him, you hear the rumble of artillery being moved into position, the big guns that the infantry both fear and respect. Your sergeant moves along the line, checking each man's equipment. "Cartridges," he barks when he reaches you. 20, Sergeant," you reply, patting your cartridge box. "Flint?" "Sharp and secure, Sergeant." "Bayonet?" You draw the long, triangular blade from its scabbard, displaying it for his inspection. "Good," he grunts, moving to the next man. "Remember your training. Load, aim, fire. Keep your powder dry. Stay in line. Watch your flanks." Simple instructions drilled into you over months of training, but will you remember them when the bullets start flying? The fog begins to lift as the sun rises higher, burning off the mist to reveal the landscape around you. You can see the Pratzen heights more clearly now. See the mass of enemy troops assembled there, columns of infantry in white coats, squadrons of cavalry, batteries of artillery. So many of them, their bayonets gleaming in the winter sun. Your mouth goes dry at the sight. How can you possibly prevail against such numbers? But something strange is happening. Instead of advancing towards you, the enemy seems to be moving away, shifting their forces to your right flank. They think Napoleon's army is retreating, that you're weak and demoralized after weeks of falling back before them. They don't know that this is exactly what the Emperor wants them to think. The order comes to advance. Your regiment moves forward in column, thousands of boots striking the frozen ground in unison. The sound is like distant thunder, a physical thing you can feel in your chest. Drums beat the cadence, steady, relentless. As you march, you steal glances at the men around you. Marcel's face is set in grim determination. Pierre keeps muttering what sounds like a prayer under his breath. Henri looks like he might be sick at any moment. You wonder what your own face reveals. The column halts near the foot of the Pratzen Heights. Through gaps in the units ahead, you can see French forces engaging the enemy on the right flank, drawing more and more of the Russian and Austrian troops away from the centre. Hours pass in tense waiting. The sound of distant gunfire ebbs and flows. Occasionally, a courier gallops past, carrying messages between commanders. The sun climbs higher, burning away the last of the morning fog to reveal a clear blue sky, what will later be called the sun of Austerlitz. Then, suddenly, the order comes. Forward to the heights. Your regiment surges forward, part of a massive French assault on the now weakened centre of the enemy line. The ground slopes upward, and your legs burn with the effort of climbing while carrying your equipment, but fear and excitement lend you strength you didn't know you had. As you near the crest of the heights, the first Russian volley tears through your ranks. Men fall around you, some screaming, some eerily silent. The smell of blood mingles with the acrid stench of gunpowder. "Close ranks," shouts your lieutenant, his sword raised high. Forward, you step over the body of a fallen comrade, forcing yourself not to look at his face. There's no time for grief now, no time for anything but survival. "Battalion, halt," the command rings out. "Make ready." Your hands move automatically, performing the drill you've practiced hundreds of times. You pull a paper cartridge from your box, tear it open with your teeth, the taste of gunpowder bitter on your tongue. You prime the pan of your flintlock, pour the rest down the barrel, and ram the ball home with your ramrod. Take aim. You raise your musket, bracing it against your shoulder, sighting along the barrel at the mass of white-coated Russians 100 paces ahead. Your heart hammers in your chest. Your mouth is dry as dust. Fire. You pull the trigger. The flint strikes, sparks ignite the priming powder, and your musket roars and kicks against your shoulder. Through the cloud of smoke that instantly envelops you, you can't see if your shot found its mark. There's no time to wonder. Already, you're reaching for another cartridge, beginning the loading process again. Around you, your comrades are doing the same, creating a continuous rolling fire that cuts down rank after rank of the enemy. But the Russians aren't retreating. They're advancing, their own muskets blazing, their artillery sending round shot bouncing through your formation, smashing men to bloody ruin. "Fix bayonets," comes the order, and the metallic scrape of bayonets being attached to musket barrels ripples down the line. The Russians are close now, close enough that you can see their faces. Men just like you, terrified but determined, fighting for their own emperor, their own country. They fix their own bayonets, longer than yours, deadly steel glinting in the winter sun. "Charge!" With a roar that tears from your throat without conscious thought, you surge forward with your comrades, bayonet levelled. The distance between the lines closes in seconds, and then you're among them, thrusting, parrying, fighting for your life. Your bayonet strikes something solid, a man's chest, and sticks there. You pull the trigger, hoping there's still a charge in your weapon. The musket fires and the Russian soldier falls away, your bayonet pulling free. A blinding pain erupts in your left arm. You look down to see blood seeping through your sleeve, a bayonet thrust that caught you just below the shoulder, but there's no time to tend to it. Another Russian is before you, his musket raised like a club. You dodge the blow, stumbling backward, nearly falling over a body on the ground. Marcel appears beside you, driving his bayonet into your attacker's side. "Watch yourself, baker boy," he shouts over the din of battle. "I won't always be here to save you." The fighting is chaotic, a swirling mass of blue and white uniforms, the air filled with shouts, screams, the crack of muskets, the clash of steel on steel. Time loses all meaning. You exist moment to moment, driven by instinct and training. Then, suddenly, the Russians break. One moment they're fighting desperately, the next they're turning, running, a disorganized mass flowing down the backside of the heights like water. "Forward!" the cry goes up along the French line. "Victory! Forward!" Your regiment surges after the fleeing enemy, but you find yourself unable to move. The wound in your arm throbs with each heartbeat, and now that the immediate danger has passed, you feel lightheaded. Looking down, you see that your sleeve is soaked with blood, and the ground at your feet is spotted with crimson. "Medic!" calls Marcel, appearing at your side again. "We need a medic here!" A man in a dark coat pushes through the ranks, one of the regimental surgeons. He takes one look at your arm and nods. "You'll live. Come with me to the field hospital." Marcel gives your uninjured shoulder a squeeze. "Go get patched up, Jean. We'll finish this without you." The surgeon leads you away from the front line, back down the slope that you fought so hard to climb. Around you, other wounded men are making the same journey, some walking, some carried on stretchers. The more severely wounded cry out with every step the stretcher bearers take. The field hospital is a large tent set up in a protected hollow. Outside, a growing pile of amputated limbs lies in the trampled snow, a grisly testament to the cost of this day's work. The sight of it makes your stomach lurch, but the surgeon leads you past it into the tent. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of blood and the sweet sickly scent of gangrenous flesh. Men lie on the ground or on makeshift tables, some conscious and moaning, others mercifully unconscious. Surgeons move among them, their aprons stained crimson, working with a speed born of desperate necessity. "Sit there," your surgeon says, pointing to an empty spot on a bench. "I'll be with you when I can." You do as you're told, cradling your wounded arm. Now that you're away from the immediate danger of the battlefield, shock begins to set in. You're shivering, though whether from cold or fear, you can't tell. Hours pass. The sounds of battle continue in the distance, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. More wounded arrive continuously, the less severely injured like yourself giving way to those with more urgent needs. Finally, as the winter sun begins to sink toward the horizon, the surgeon returns to you. He cuts away your sleeve, exposing the wound, a deep gash that's still seeping blood. "You're lucky," he grunts, examining it. "Clean wound, no fragments, missed the major vessels." He pulls a bottle from his bag and uncorks it. "This will hurt." Before you can prepare yourself, he pours the liquid, strong spirits of some kind, directly onto the wound. The pain is immediate and intense, like fire flowing through your veins. You bite your lip to keep from crying out, tasting blood. The surgeon works quickly, cleaning the wound, then stitching it closed with catgut. Each stitch sends a fresh jolt of pain through your arm, but you endure it silently, watching his skilled hands work. Keep it clean, he says when he's finished, wrapping a bandage around your arm. Change the dressing daily. If it turns hot or starts to smell, find a surgeon immediately. He hands you a small packet. Laudanum for the pain. Use it sparingly. With that, he moves on to the next patient, already forgetting you in the press of work. Outside the tent, the light is fading. The sounds of battle have diminished to sporadic gunfire and the distant boom of cannon. You make your way back toward your regiment's position, your arm throbbing with each step. You find them bivouacked near the crest of the Pratzen heights. Fires burning brightly now that there's no need for concealment. Men greet you with tired smiles and nods as you make your way to your company. Marcel spots you first. Jean, you're alive. He embraces you carefully, mindful of your wounded arm. And just in time for the celebration, we've won a great victory. The Russians, you ask, easing yourself down beside the fire. Fleeing in disorder, says Pierre, handing you a tin cup filled with wine. The Austrians too. The Emperor himself led the Imperial Guard in the final attack. You should have seen it, Jean. The most glorious thing I've ever witnessed. You sip the wine, feeling its warmth spread through your chest. What about Henri? A shadow crosses Marcel's face. Took a Russian bayonet in the chest. He's with the surgeons now. They don't know if he'll make it through the night. The news sobers you. Henri, so young, so full of dreams of glory, now fighting for his life in that terrible tent of blood and pain. And you ask Marcel. You're unhurt? He grins, though the expression doesn't reach his eyes. Not a scratch. The devil looks after his own, my mother always said. As night falls completely, an order passes through the camp. The Emperor wishes to walk among his troops. Men who moments before were collapsing with exhaustion now straighten their uniforms, brush the dirt from their coats as best they can. Napoleon appears like a ghost out of the darkness, still in his grey coat, though now it's spattered with mud and what might be blood. He moves from fire to fire, speaking briefly with the men, congratulating them on their victory. When he reaches your fire, you struggle to your feet along with the others, standing at attention despite the pain in your arm. At ease, my children, Napoleon says, his voice surprisingly gentle. You've earned your rest today. His eyes scan your faces, lingering on your bandaged arm. Wounded, Sergeant? It takes you a moment to realize he's addressing you. Private, sire. Jean Dupont, 45th line. And how do you fare, Private Dupont? It's nothing, sire, you hear yourself say. I'll be back in the ranks tomorrow. A ghost of a smile crosses Napoleon's face. Good man, France needs soldiers like you. He turns to address all of you. Today you've won a victory that will echo through history, the Battle of Austerlitz. Remember this day, my children. Tell your grandchildren that you were here, that you fought for France and for me. With that, he moves on, continuing his tour of the camp. You sink back down beside the fire, strangely moved by the encounter. The Emperor himself spoke to you, remembered your wound, your dedication. Did you hear that? Marcel says, his eyes wide. The Battle of Austerlitz. We're part of history now, Jean. You nod. Too tired to speak. The day's events wash over you. The terror of battle, the pain of your wound, the strange exhilaration of survival. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. Your mind replays the moments of combat in vivid flashes. The Russian soldier falling away from your bayonet, the near miss of the musket swung like a club, Marcel appearing like a guardian angel to save you. You've killed a man today, perhaps more than one. The thought should trouble you more than it does, but all you feel is a dull relief that it was him and not you. Someone hands you a bowl of hot soup, real soup, with chunks of meat and vegetables, not the watery gruel you've subsisted on for weeks. The army's supply wagons must have caught up, or perhaps this is food captured from the enemy camp. You don't care about its origin, you're just grateful for its warmth and substance. As you eat, officers move through the camp, distributing brandy to the men, a gift from the emperor himself to celebrate the victory. When your turn comes, you take a small sip, feeling it burn all the way down to your stomach. You've never tasted anything so fine. With food in your belly and brandy warming your blood, exhaustion claims you. You spread your blanket on the frozen ground, using your pack as a pillow. The pain in your arm has subsided to a dull throb, whether from the laudanum the surgeon gave you or simply from exhaustion, you can't tell. Around you, men are already sleeping, their snores rising into the night air like a strange chorus. Above, the stars shine with a cold brilliance, indifferent to the thousands of lives lost and changed on the fields below. You've survived your first battle. You've seen men die, felt the sting of enemy steel, heard the emperor himself praise your courage. You're no longer just a baker's son from Lille. You're a soldier of the Grande Armée, a veteran of Austerlitz. As sleep claims you, your thoughts drift to home, to the bakery with its warm ovens and familiar smells. Will you ever see it again, or will your bones lie bleaching on some distant battlefield like so many others? But those are thoughts for another day. Tonight, you're alive. Tonight, you're victorious. Tonight, you sleep the sleep of the exhausted soldier, dreamless and deep. The last thing you hear before consciousness fades completely is Marcel's voice, soft and thoughtful in the darkness. I wonder where we'll go next. Spain? Prussia? Russia? The Emperor won't stop with Austria. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning. The words follow you down into darkness, a promise and a warning all at once. Your breathing slows, your muscles relax, and the pain of your wound recedes as sleep enfolds you in its merciful embrace. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new marches, perhaps new battles, but tonight, on the heights of Austerlitz, you rest. The warm summer breeze carries the scent of ripening wheat across the Prussian countryside. You shift your weight against the ancient oak tree where you've stationed yourself, adjusting the corporal's stripes on your sleeve that still feel new and strange after 3 months. Your wound from Austerlitz has healed, leaving only a puckered scar and an occasional ache when rain is coming. It's July 1807, 18 months since that bloody day at Austerlitz. The Grande Armée has marched thousands of kilometres since then, through victories and hardships that have transformed you from a raw recruit into a veteran. You've survived the muddy fields of Jena, where the Prussian army was shattered in a single day. You've endured the bitter cold and carnage of Eylau, where French and Russian forces battled to a bloody stalemate in a snowstorm so thick you could barely see the enemy 20 paces away. And now, after the decisive French victory at Friedland and the Treaty of Tilsit, you find yourself in occupied Prussia, serving as part of the garrison force that keeps the defeated nation under Napoleon's control. Your stomach growls, reminding you that it's nearly time for the midday meal. The local Prussian farmers have been ordered to supply the occupying French forces with food, and while they resent it, their bread is hearty, their sausages flavourful, and their beer strong. It's a far cry from the starvation rations you endured during the winter campaign. From your position on the low hill, you can see the small farming village where your company is billeted. Smoke rises from chimneys as the village women prepare meals, some for their families, some for the French soldiers quartered in their homes and barns. Your squad is housed in the upper floor of a grain mill at the edge of the village, the wooden building offering more privacy and comfort than you've known in months of campaign tents and open-air bivouacs. Marcel appears at the bottom of the hill, waving to catch your attention. He's aged in the past year and a half. You all have. His once boyish face is now weathered, a thin scar running along his jawline where a Russian sabre caught him at Eylau, but his grin is the same as ever. "Corporal Dupont!" he calls, emphasising your rank with mock formality. "The captain wants to see you." You straighten up, brushing dirt from your uniform. In the summer heat, you've been permitted to remove your heavy wool coat, serving your guard duty in just waistcoat and shirt sleeves. Now you retrieve the coat from where it hangs on a nearby branch, slipping it on, despite the sweat that immediately begins to form on your back. Any idea what he wants? You ask as Marcel falls into step beside you on the path back to the village. Courier arrived from regimental headquarters, Marcel replies with a shrug. Brought dispatches, maybe we're moving out. The thought brings mixed feelings. Part of you has grown comfortable in this peaceful village, away from the constant danger of the battlefield. But another part? A part you scarcely recognise as belonging to the baker's son from Lille. Itches for movement, for action, for the strange camaraderie that only comes in the face of shared danger. The village street is quiet in the midday heat. Chickens scratch in the dust, and a few children peer curiously at you from doorways before being hurriedly pulled inside by watchful mothers. Not all the locals have accepted the French occupation, despite Napoleon's proclamations about bringing liberty and the new order to the German states. Captain Mercier is waiting in the village headman's house, which has been requisitioned as the company headquarters. Maps are spread across a sturdy wooden table, and the captain's orderly is carefully copying something from a dispatch. Corporal Dupont reporting as ordered, sir, you say, standing at attention. Mercier looks up, his weathered face creased in what might be the beginning of a smile. He's a career soldier who rose from the ranks, respected by the men for his fairness and his coolness under fire. At ease, Corporal, 2 pieces of news for you. First, your squad is being sent to escort a supply convoy from Königsberg. You'll leave at first light tomorrow. You nod, feeling a small thrill of responsibility. It's your first independent command since your promotion. Second, Mercier continues, mail has arrived. He gestures to a small pile of letters on the corner of the table. There's one for you. Your heart jumps. Mail from home is rare and precious, especially this far into occupied territory. You step forward to take the letter, recognizing your mother's careful handwriting on the outside. Thank you, sir, you say, tucking the letter into your coat pocket. You'll read it in private later. Choose 4 men for the escort duty, Mercier adds. The convoy has 6 wagons, mostly ammunition and medical supplies. Should be routine, but stay alert. There are still Prussian partisans operating in the forests. Yes, sir. Marcel Fournier, Pierre Dubois, François Lefebvre, and Alain Moreau. Good choices. Dismissed. Outside, Marcel is waiting, curiosity written across his face. Well, are we marching to Russia? You laugh. Not yet. Just escort duty for a supply convoy. You, me, Pierre, François, and Alain. We leave at dawn. Escort duty? Marcel's face falls in mock disappointment. I was hoping for something more exciting. Be careful what you wish for, you reply, thinking of Eylau, the screams of wounded men freezing to death in the snow, the cannonballs bouncing across the frozen ground, shearing off limbs and heads with terrible randomness. I've had enough excitement to last a lifetime. Back at the mill, you climb the wooden stairs to the loft where your squad is quartered. The space is relatively clean and comfortable. Straw pallets for sleeping, wooden pegs on the walls for hanging equipment, a small hearth for cooking and warmth. After months of sleeping on the ground, it feels almost luxurious. Pierre is there, carefully writing in a small journal. Unlike most of the men in the company, he came from an educated family and can read and write with ease. He often helps the other soldiers compose letters home, a service for which he's paid in small luxuries, a share of wine, a piece of sausage, first choice of sleeping spots. Mail came, you tell him, pulling out your letter. Nothing for you, I'm afraid. Pierre shrugs. I wasn't expecting anything. My father made it clear he considers me dead the moment I joined the army. You settle onto your pallet, carefully breaking the seal on your letter. The paper is cheap and rough, but the sight of your mother's handwriting brings a lump to your throat. It's dated 3 months ago. News from another world, another life. The letter begins with family matters. Your sister Marie has married the blacksmith's son. Your father's bakery is doing well despite flour shortages. Your younger brother is apprenticed to a carpenter. Then comes the news of your village, who has died, who has been born, which farms have prospered or failed. Only at the end does your mother mention the war in carefully neutral terms that won't attract the attention of censors. We hear news of the Emperor's victories and pray daily for the safe return of our brave soldiers. The recruiting officer says that many fine young men from our village are serving with honour, though some families have received the news they most feared. The Moreau family held a mass for their son, Claude, killed at a place called Eylau. He was your age, Jean, and used to play with you when you were boys. His mother weeps daily. You fold the letter carefully, tucking it into your pack where you keep your most precious possessions. A small wooden cross your mother gave you, a smooth stone from the banks of a river in Austria, a button from a Russian officer's coat taken as a souvenir after Austerlitz. Claude Moreau. You remember him vaguely, a skinny boy with a quick laugh who was good at climbing trees. Now he's just another body in a mass grave in Poland, one of thousands who will never return home. Bad news? Asks Pierre, noticing your expression. Boy from my village died at Eylau, someone I knew as a child. Pierre nods, understanding without need for further explanation. Every man in the Grande Armée has lost friends, comrades, brothers in arms. Death is their constant companion. The rest of the day passes in preparation for tomorrow's mission. You clean your musket, check your cartridges, make sure your squad's equipment is in good order. As corporal, you're responsible for these men now, for their discipline and their lives. At dusk, you gather with Marcel, Pierre, François, and Alain at the village tavern. The owner, a sullen Prussian with a wooden leg from some forgotten war, serves you beer with barely concealed resentment. But business is business, and French coins spend as well as Prussian ones. To escort duty, Marcel says, raising his mug. May it be as boring as possible. To the Emperor, adds François, a fervent Bonapartist who joined the army voluntarily rather than waiting for conscription. May his star continue to rise. To home, says Pierre quietly. May we see it again someday. You all drink to that. Home. Despite the camaraderie, despite the strange pride you've developed in being part of the Grande Armée, home remains the dream that sustains you through each march, each battle, each cold and hungry night. After the tavern, you return to the mill for a few hours of sleep before your dawn departure. But rest doesn't come easily. Your mind is filled with images. Claude Moreau as a boy climbing the tallest tree in your village. Henri, the young soldier from your unit, his chest torn open by a Russian bayonet at Austerlitz. He survived barely, but was sent home an invalid. The faceless Russian soldier who fell to your bayonet in your first battle. You rise before dawn, dressing quietly to avoid waking the others who don't have duty this morning. Outside, the eastern sky is just beginning to lighten, stars still visible overhead. The air is cool and damp with dew, a welcome relief after yesterday's heat. At the edge of the village, the supply convoy is already assembling. 6 heavy wagons drawn by sturdy draft horses. The teamsters, a mix of French army regulars and local civilians pressed into service, check harnesses and wheels by lantern light. Your squad arrives one by one. Marcel, yawning but alert. Pierre, quiet and thoughtful as always. Francois, eager and energetic despite the early hour. Alain, the newest member of your group, a replacement who joined after Eylau, still finding his place among veterans. "Form up," you order. Pleased when they respond immediately, forming a neat line for inspection. Check your equipment. 20 cartridges each, flints sharp, bayonets secure. This should be routine, but stay alert. Questions? There are none. These men know their duty, know what's expected of them. The convoy sets out as the sun crests the horizon, bathing the countryside in golden light. You position your men strategically, Marcel and yourself at the front, Pierre and Francois on the flanks, Alain bringing up the rear. From these positions you can observe the surrounding terrain and respond quickly to any threat. The road winds through fields of wheat and rye, occasionally passing through patches of dense forest. It's in these wooded areas that you feel most vulnerable, your senses heightened for any sign of ambush. But the morning passes uneventfully. By midday, you've covered about 15 kilometers, making good time on the well-maintained Prussian roads. You call a brief halt by a stream to water the horses and allow the men a few minutes to rest and eat the bread and sausage you brought from the village. As the teamsters tend to their horses, you wade into the stream, splashing cool water on your face and neck. The summer heat has returned in force, and your uniform is already damp with sweat. You fill your canteen, then move back to a shady spot where Marcel is sitting, chewing thoughtfully on a piece of dark bread. "Easy duty so far," he comments as you join him. "Don't jinx it," you reply, only half joking. Soldiers are a superstitious lot, and Marcel's casual confidence makes you uneasy. Your instincts prove correct. As the convoy resumes its journey and enters another stretch of forest, a shot rings out from the dense underbrush. One of the teamsters cries out, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "Ambush! Take cover!" you shout, diving for the shelter of the wagon. More shots follow, the distinctive crack of hunting rifles rather than military muskets. Prussian partisans then, not deserters or regular troops. Your men respond with well-drilled precision. Marcel and Francois return fire into the woods while Pierre helps the wounded teamster to safety behind the wagons. Alain moves to secure the horses, preventing them from bolting and leaving you stranded. You estimate there are perhaps 5 or 6 attackers firing from concealed positions among the trees. Their aim is good, but their rate of fire is slow. These are hunting weapons that take time to reload, not the faster loading military muskets your squad carries. "Marcel, Francois, covering fire," you order. "Pierre, with me. We'll flank them from the left." While Marcel and Francois keep the attackers' heads down with a steady barrage of musket fire, you and Pierre move quickly through the underbrush, circling toward the source of the enemy shots. Your heart pounds in your chest, but your hands are steady. This isn't your first time under fire. You spot them before they see you. 4 men in civilian clothes crouched behind fallen logs and trees, reloading their rifles. From their rough clothing and weathered faces, they appear to be local farmers or woodsmen, not trained soldiers. You raise your musket, taking careful aim at the nearest partisan. The man is young, perhaps no older than you were when you joined the army. For a brief moment you hesitate, remembering Claude Moreau, remembering all the young men who will never return home. Then the partisan raises his rifle, aiming at something beyond your field of vision, perhaps Marcel or Francois, still providing covering fire from the road. You squeeze the trigger, your musket roars, smoke momentarily obscuring your vision. When it clears, the young partisan is on the ground, motionless. Pierre fires a moment later, and another attacker falls. The remaining two partisans, seeing their comrades down and their position compromised, throw down their weapons and raise their hands in surrender. "Don't shoot," one calls out in broken French. "We surrender." You advance cautiously, keeping your bayonet levelled at the surrendering men. They're older than the two you shot, one with grey in his beard, both with the calloused hands of labourers. "Bind them," you order Pierre, who produces rope from his pack. "We'll take them back to the village for questioning." The skirmish has lasted less than 10 minutes. When you return to the convoy, you find the wounded teamster being tended by Alain, who has some skill with bandages. The man's injury isn't life-threatening. The ball passed clean through his shoulder without hitting bone or major vessels. "They're just farmers," Marcel says quietly as you inspect the captured weapons. Old hunting rifles, well maintained but nothing like military arms. Probably had their crops requisitioned one too many times. You nod, feeling a complex mix of emotions. These men were trying to kill you and your comrades, yet you understand their desperation. The French occupation has not been gentle on the local population, despite the Emperor's lofty proclamations about liberty and the rights of man. The rest of the journey passes without incident. You reach Königsberg by nightfall, delivering the supplies to the French garrison there and turning your prisoners over to the military police. Their fate isn't your concern, though you suspect it won't be pleasant. Resistance to the Emperor's rule is dealt with harshly. The garrison commander provides your squad with quarters for the night, actual beds in a converted schoolhouse, a luxury you haven't experienced since leaving France. There's hot food in the mess hall and even wine, a rare treat for common soldiers. After dinner, you find yourself unable to sleep despite the comfortable bed. The events of the day keep replaying in your mind: the crack of rifles, the young partisan falling to your shot, the surrender of the older men. You slip out of the barracks, finding a quiet spot in the garrison courtyard where you can be alone with your thoughts. The night is clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere to the west lies France, your home, your family. Somewhere to the east lies Russia, a vast empire that many say will eventually come into conflict with Napoleon's ambitions. And here you are, a baker's son from Lille, caught in the currents of history, carried far from home by forces you can barely comprehend. A sentry passes, nodding to you but asking no questions. The corporal's stripes on your sleeve grant you certain privileges, including the freedom to move about the garrison without challenge. Your thoughts turn to the future. How long will this war continue? How many more battles will you fight? How many more men will you kill before you can return home? Or will you, like Claude Moreau, never see France again? The Emperor has been victorious so far, but each victory seems to lead only to another campaign, another enemy, another battlefield. Austria, Prussia, Russia, great powers falling one by one before Napoleon's military genius. But how long can it last? How long can France sustain this endless warfare? These are questions above your station, concerns for generals and politicians, not for a corporal in the infantry. Your world is smaller, your squad, your company, the few feet of ground around you in battle. That's where your responsibilities lie. You return to the barracks, slipping quietly past the sleeping forms of your comrades. Marcel snores softly, one arm flung over his face. Pierre lies motionless, his breathing so light you can barely detect it. François mumbles in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of glory or of home. Alain, the newest member of your group, sleeps curled on his side like a child, vulnerable in a way he never allows himself to appear when awake. These men are your responsibility, your brothers in arms. Whatever comes, whatever new campaigns, whatever distant battlefields, you'll face it together, just as you've faced everything since that first march from the barracks in France. You settle onto your bed, feeling the exhaustion of the day finally overtaking your restless thoughts. Tomorrow, you'll begin the journey back to your village garrison, another small mission completed in the vast machinery of Napoleon's empire. As sleep claims you, your last conscious thought is a memory, not of battle or bloodshed, but of standing on a hill overlooking your home village as a boy, watching the sunset paint the distant fields gold and crimson, feeling the warm summer breeze against your face. Much like the breeze that greeted you this morning in Prussia, so far from home. Your breathing slows, your muscles relax, and for a few precious hours you escape the reality of war, of occupation, of responsibility. In your dreams, you're simply Jean Dupont, a baker's son from Lille, with flour on your hands instead of gunpowder, the smell of fresh bread replacing the acrid scent of musket fire, and the only sounds the gentle voices of your family instead of the harsh commands of sergeants and the screams of wounded men. Sleep deep, soldier. Tomorrow brings another day, another duty, another step in the long journey of Napoleon's Grande Armée. The cold is your enemy now, not the Russians, though they harry your flanks day and night, not hunger, though your stomach has forgotten what fullness feels like. Not even the broken remnants of discipline that once made the Grande Armée the most formidable fighting force in Europe. No, it's the cold that will kill you, the cold that seeps through your tattered greatcoat, that freezes the tears on your cheeks, that turns your breath to ice in your beard, the cold that has already claimed thousands of your comrades, their frozen bodies lining the long road from Moscow to salvation. November 1812, the retreat from Russia, the end of dreams. Your breath clouds in front of your face as you trudge forward, one foot in front of the other, each step an act of will. Your boots are falling apart, wrapped in strips of cloth torn from the uniforms of the dead. Your fingers, stuffed into mittens made from scraps of a horse blanket, have long since lost all feeling. The stump where your left little toe used to be before frostbite claimed it throbs with each step. Sergeant Jean Dupont, 45th Line Infantry, veteran of Austerlitz, Jena, Eylau, Friedland, Wagram, and a dozen smaller engagements. 7 years in the Emperor's service. 7 years that have transformed you from a baker's boy into a soldier, a leader of men, a survivor. But this frozen hell may be where even your luck finally runs out. Keep moving, you tell the small group of men who follow you, the remains of what was once your squad, plus stragglers who've attached themselves to any leader who still seems to have purpose. Stop moving and you die. Marcel, still beside you after all these years, nods grimly. His once youthful face is now gaunt and weathered, a thick beard crusted with ice concealing the scar along his jawline. The only man left from your original unit. He's more brother than friend now. Your history's intertwined through blood and fire and suffering. How far to the Berezina? He asks, his voice cracked and dry. 3 days' march, if we can keep this pace. You don't add, if the Cossacks don't catch us, or if another blizzard doesn't hit, or if we find food somewhere. Those fears are unspoken but understood by every man here. You look back at your ragged column, 15 men where once you commanded 40. Some are veterans like yourself, men who followed the Eagles across Europe. Others are newer recruits, boys who joined the Grande Armée at its height of glory, never imagining they would see its nadir. All are half-starved, frostbitten, exhausted beyond human endurance, yet somehow still moving forward. Among them is Pierre Dubois, the educated soldier who once kept a journal of your campaigns. He no longer writes. His journal was sacrificed weeks ago to start a fire on a particularly bitter night. His fingers, once so nimble with a pen, are now blackened with frostbite. He'll lose at least 3 of them if he survives to reach a field hospital. When did it all go wrong? Was it the fire that consumed Moscow just as you thought you'd found shelter for the winter? Was it the Emperor's fateful decision to delay the retreat until October, when the Russian autumn was already giving way to winter? Or was it earlier, when Napoleon decided to invade this vast, unconquerable country in the first place? It doesn't matter now. All that matters is survival, putting one foot in front of the other, staying ahead of the Cossacks, finding food where you can, and keeping warm enough to see another dawn. The column trudges forward along a road that's more a trail of corpses than a proper highway. The dead lie where they fell, some still clutching meagre possessions they couldn't bring themselves to abandon. A cooking pot, a family portrait, a tattered regimental flag. You step around them, not out of respect, but because experience has taught you that frozen bodies make treacherous footing. Your thoughts drift to warmer days, to that summer morning in Prussia 5 years ago when your greatest concern was escorting a supply convoy. How simple it all seems in retrospect. How unimaginably luxurious. A cry from the rear of your column snaps you back to the present. Turning, you see one of the younger soldiers, a boy named Etienne, barely 17 years old, has collapsed in the snow. Keep moving, you order the others as you backtrack to the fallen soldier. Marcel follows, of course. He always does. Etienne's eyes are closed, his breathing shallow. Not dead yet, but close. The cold takes men like this, sapping their strength until they can no longer go on. Then lulling them into a final sleep from which they never wake. Up, you command, hauling the boy to his feet with strength you didn't know you still possessed. On your feet, soldier. The Emperor is watching. A lie, of course. Napoleon is far ahead with what remains of the Imperial Guard, the elite troops still maintaining some semblance of military order. The rest of the Grande Armée is a broken, desperate mass, stretching for miles along the frozen road. Etienne's eyes flutter open. Can't go on, he mumbles through cracked lips. You can and you will, you tell him, your voice harsh with desperation. You've seen too many men die to lose another. Marcel, help him walk. Marcel takes one of the boy's arms while you take the other. Together, you half drag, half carry him forward, rejoining the shambling column. We need food, Marcel says quietly, so the others won't hear. Real food, not horse meat, and shelter. We won't last another night in the open, not with a storm coming. You glance at the sky. The clouds are gathering to the north, dark and ominous. Another blizzard, another test of endurance. There's a village marked on the map, about 5 kilometers ahead, you reply. If it hasn't been picked clean already, the unspoken hangs between you. Every village, every farm, every potential source of food or shelter along the retreat route has been stripped bare by the desperate army. Some have been burned to the ground, either by retreating French troops or by Russians denying the invaders any comfort. Still, it's the only hope you have, the only hope any of you have. We'll make it, Marcel says, and you're not sure if he's trying to convince you or himself. We've made it this far. The wind picks up as the afternoon wears on, carrying the first flakes of snow, harbingers of the storm to come. Your pace quickens as much as exhaustion allows, the promise of shelter, however slight, driving you forward. The village, when you finally reach it in the fading light, is a collection of simple wooden houses clustered around a small stone church. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, a promising sign. Where there's fire, there might be food. Where there's fire, there's warmth. But you're not the first to arrive. Other stragglers from the Grande Armée are already here, some begging for scraps at doors that remain firmly closed, others breaking into abandoned houses or barns. The villagers who haven't fled have barricaded themselves in, protecting what little they have from the desperate soldiers. You gather your men in the shadow of the church. We need food and shelter, you tell them, your voice low. But we are still soldiers of France, not bandits. We do not steal from civilians. We do not harm the innocent. It's a principle you've clung to throughout the campaign, even as you've watched others abandon all restraint, all humanity. You've seen what desperation can do to men, good men, men who in peacetime would never harm another soul. You've seen them transform into animals fighting over scraps, killing for a loaf of bread or a warm coat. You will not let your men become that, not while you still draw breath. Marcel, Pierre, with me, you order. The rest of you, wait here. Stay together. If Cossacks come, fire 3 shots in quick succession and fall back to the church. The village headman's house is the largest in the settlement, a 2-story wooden structure at the village centre. You approach openly, your hands visible, trying to appear as unthreatening as 3 armed, bearded, half-starved soldiers can. You knock on the door, no response. You knock again, harder. Finally, a voice from within, speaking Russian, a language you've picked up fragments of during the long campaign. Go away, nothing for you here, you respond in your broken Russian, the words feeling strange on your tongue. We have wounded, need shelter from storm, can pay. This last part is a lie. You have nothing of value except your weapons, and those you will never surrender. But desperation makes liars of even the most honest men. A long silence. Then the sound of a bolt being drawn back. The door opens a crack, revealing the weathered face of an old man, his eyes wary beneath bushy white brows. "How many?" he asks in halting French, surprising you. 15 men, you reply. 1 wounded badly. We need shelter for the night. Food, if you can spare it. We'll be gone by dawn. The old man studies you for a long moment, perhaps seeing something in your face that convinces him you're not like the other desperate soldiers who've passed through his village. "The barn," he says finally, gesturing to a structure behind his house. "Not the house. Too many of you. I bring food, but not much. All have little now." "Thank you," you say, the words inadequate for the gift he's offering, the gift of survival, at least for another night. The barn is cold but dry, the straw on the floor providing better bedding than you've had in weeks. Your men settle in, grateful for the shelter as the wind outside rises to a howl, driving snow against the wooden walls. True to his word, the old Russian brings food, a pot of thin cabbage soup, a few loaves of black bread, and, miracle of miracles, a small cask of vodka, not enough to satisfy 15 starving men, but enough to keep death at bay for another day. As night falls, you organise your men into watches. Cossacks have been known to attack even in blizzards, materialising out of the swirling snow like demons to cut down stragglers and isolated groups. During the first watch, you sit by the barn door, your musket across your knees. It's one of the few weapons in your group that still functions reliably, kept meticulously clean despite the harsh conditions. Many of the men have discarded their muskets, the weight too much to bear in their weakened state. Some have fashioned crude spears from bayonets tied to sticks, lighter than muskets but still offering some protection against the marauding Cossack cavalry. Marcel joins you, sharing the watch though you didn't ask him to. He sips from a small cup of vodka, the spirit bringing a hint of colour back to his gaunt cheeks. "Do you think we'll make it home?" he asks quietly, his eyes fixed on the barn door as if he can see through it, to France, to safety, to peace. You consider lying, offering false hope as you have so many times during this nightmare retreat. But this is Marcel, your brother in all but blood. He deserves the truth. Or some of us will, you reply. Not all, maybe not even most, but some. He nods, accepting this. I keep thinking of that baker's shop in Lille, your father's place. Remember how you told me about the smell of fresh bread every morning? I dream about that smell now. You do remember. It seems like another lifetime, another world, warm and safe and filled with simple pleasures that you took for granted. The crisp crust of a freshly baked baguette, the weight of dough in your hands, the heat of the ovens on a winter morning. If we make it back, you say, allowing yourself a rare moment of hope, I'll bake you the best loaf of bread you've ever tasted. Marcel smiles, the expression transforming his haggard face, briefly revealing the young farmer's son who joined the army with you 7 long years ago. I'll hold you to that, Jean Dupont. The night passes without incident, the blizzard keeping even the Cossacks at bay. By morning, the storm has passed, leaving a world transformed. Drifts of fresh snow covering the bodies along the road, smoothing the rough edges of reality, creating an illusion of peace that you know won't last. Your men are stronger after a night under shelter, the meagre food and rest restoring some small measure of vitality. Even Etienne seems improved, his eyes clearer, his steps more certain as you form up to continue the march. You thank the old Russian, offering him the one thing of value you possess, a small golden locket containing a lock of your mother's hair given to you when you left home. He refuses, pushing your hand away. Keep, he says in his broken French, for mother. Go home to her. You wonder if he had sons in the Russian army, if they're among the thousands who fell at Berezina or Smolensk or any of the other bloody engagements of this doomed campaign. Or perhaps they're pursuing the remnants of the Grande Armée right now, seeking vengeance for their ravaged homeland. The road ahead stretches endlessly, a white ribbon through a frozen landscape. Somewhere along it lies the Berezina River, which you must cross to reach relative safety. Beyond that, Poland, Prussia, and eventually France, home. But first, the Berezina. The word itself has taken on an ominous weight, whispered by soldiers like a prayer or a curse. Reports have reached you of Russian armies converging on the river crossings, seeking to trap the retreating French forces. If they succeed, if the bridges are destroyed or never built, the remains of the Grande Armée will be annihilated. You push these thoughts aside, focusing on the immediate task. Keeping your men moving, keeping them alive for another day, another hour. The column reshapes itself on the road, 15 men in ragged blue coats, some limping, some coughing, all moving with the same dogged determination. You take your place at the front, setting the pace, watching for danger, making decisions that might mean life or death for those who follow you. By midday, you encounter more stragglers, soldiers separated from their units, civilians who had followed the army as sutlers or camp followers, even a few women, wives of officers who had accompanied their husbands on what was to be a triumphant campaign. Some join your column, swelling your numbers to nearly 30. Others continue alone or in smaller groups, too mistrustful or too far gone to accept leadership. The snow crunches beneath your feet as you march, the only sound besides laboured breathing and occasional coughing. No one has the strength for singing now. No one tells stories of past glories or dreams of future victories. Survival has narrowed the world to the simplest of equations. Move or die, eat or die, stay warm or die. Late in the afternoon, a new sound breaks the stillness, the distant crack of muskets, followed by the deeper boom of cannon. Battle, not close, but not far enough away for comfort. Rear guard action, Pierre suggests, his voice hoarse from the cold, buying time for the river crossing. You nod, adjusting your course slightly to give the fighting a wider berth. Your small band is in no condition to join a battle, and your responsibility is to these men, not to some abstract notion of glory or duty. The gunfire continues, sometimes intensifying, sometimes fading, a deadly counterpoint to your march. As dusk approaches, you're forced to make camp in the open, there being no village or farm in sight. The night promises to be brutal, the temperature already falling rapidly as the sun sinks toward the horizon. Your men gather what fuel they can find, broken wagon parts, branches from stunted trees, even strips of leather cut from abandoned equipment. A fire is life out here, the difference between waking to see another dawn or becoming another frozen corpse along the retreat route. As darkness falls, you organize the distribution of the last food from the village, small pieces of black bread, carefully rationed. No one complains about the portions, though they're barely enough to take the edge off hunger. Complaints are for those with energy to spare, and none of you have that luxury. The fire casts flickering shadows across gaunt faces as your men huddle around it, seeking what warmth they can. You move among them, checking for signs of severe frostbite, offering what small comfort your presence can provide. A sergeant's duties don't end because an army is in retreat. You find Marcel sitting slightly apart from the others, his face troubled in the firelight. You join him, your shoulder pressing against his, sharing body heat. What is it, you ask, though there are 1,000 possible answers, none of them good. He stares into the darkness beyond the fire's light. I saw General Legrand today, moving toward the sound of the guns with what's left of his division. Do you remember what he told us after Austerlitz? You've won a victory that will echo through history. You do remember. You remember the pride in the general's voice, the certainty that you were part of something magnificent, something that would outlive you all. And now, Marcel continues, his voice barely audible above the wind. What will history say of this? Of us? It's a question that has no good answer, no comfort to offer. What will history say of the Grande Armée, frozen and starving, retreating through the Russian winter? What will it say of Napoleon, whose ambition led 500,000 men to their deaths? History will say we endured, you reply finally, that we faced what no army should have to face, and some of us survived to tell the tale. Whether this is true or merely what you need to believe to continue, you're not sure, but Marcel seems to take some solace in it, nodding slowly. We endured, he repeats, as if testing the words. Yes, not a glorious epitaph, but an honest one. The night deepens, the cold intensifying until it seems to have weight, pressing down on you, seeking entry through every gap in your clothing, every exposed patch of skin. Men take turns at the fire, rotating so that all have a chance to warm themselves at least briefly. You don't sleep. You can't. The cold is too fierce, the danger too present. Instead, you drift in a state between waking and dreaming, memories mingling with the harsh reality around you. You see your father's bakery, warm and fragrant. You see the fields of Austerlitz, where you received your first wound and first glimpsed the emperor himself. You see the Prussian village where you served as part of the occupation force, a time that now seems idyllic in comparison to your current circumstances. And you see faces, those still with you and those lost along the way. Henri, the boy soldier who took a Russian bayonet at Austerlitz but survived, sent home an invalid. Claude Moreau from your village, killed at Eylau. The nameless Russian partisan you shot during the supply convoy ambush in Prussia. The countless others who fell in battles across Europe, their names and faces blurring together in a collage of loss. Dawn finds you still awake, your eyes burning with exhaustion, your body stiff with cold. The fire has died down to embers, no longer providing meaningful heat. Around you, your men stir, those who have survived the night rising painfully to their feet, preparing for another day of marching, another test of endurance. 3 did not survive. An older soldier from another regiment who joined you yesterday, a young drummer boy whose hands and feet were already black with frostbite when you found him, and one of your own, François Lefebvre, the fervent Bonapartist who once toasted the emperor in a Prussian tavern. Their bodies are already frozen solid, their eyes staring sightlessly at the pale morning sky. There is no time for proper burial, not even for François, who marched beside you for years. The best you can do is close his eyes and cover his face with a scrap of cloth torn from his own coat. The ground is too hard for digging, and you lack the strength for it anyway. Like so many others, he will remain where he fell, a marker along the road of retreat. The column reforms, diminished again, and continues its inexorable march toward the Berezina. The sound of gunfire is more distant now, but smoke rises on the horizon. Buildings burning, bridges destroyed, the evidence of war written across the winter landscape. By midday, you begin to encounter more troops, organised units rather than stragglers, moving with purpose rather than simply fleeing. The remnants of the Grande Armée are converging on the river crossing, hope and desperation driving them forward. A mounted officer, his uniform still relatively intact, his horse thin but alive, rides past your column, then circles back when he notices your sergeant's stripes and your small but organised band. "Sergeant, what unit?" he calls, reining in beside you. 45th Line Infantry, sir," you reply, straightening as much as your exhausted body allows, old habits of military discipline asserting themselves despite everything, or what's left of it. The officer, a captain by his insignia, nods grimly. The 45th was nearly wiped out covering the retreat from Krasnoy. Good men, he gestures ahead. The Emperor is directing the construction of bridges at Studenka, about 10 kilometers ahead. The Russians think we're crossing downriver at Borisov, but they'll figure it out soon enough. Every able body is needed for the work or to hold off the enemy until the crossing is complete. "We'll do our part, sir," you assure him, though looking at your men, you wonder how much they have left to give. They're infantry, trained to fight, but in their current state, they would be cut down like wheat before a scythe if sent against fresh Russian troops. The captain seems to read your thoughts. "Your men look done in, Sergeant. Report to General Eblé at the crossing. He's in charge of the bridge construction. Engineers and artillerymen are doing most of the work, but they need protection and support. Your men can manage that much, I think." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He nods, then spurs his horse, continuing his circuit of the straggling columns. "Bridge construction," Marcel says when the captain is out of earshot. "That means wading into freezing water. Men are already dying by the hundreds trying to build those bridges. Better than facing the Cossacks with no ammunition and no strength," you reply, though you know he's right. The work will be brutal, possibly fatal, but what choice do you have? What choice does anyone have? The column continues, moving a little faster now that there's a specific destination, a concrete goal beyond simple survival. Even Pierre, his frostbitten fingers wrapped in dirty bandages, seems to have found a reserve of determination. "We'll cross the Berezina," he says, his voice stronger than it's been in days. "We'll cross, and then it's a straight march to Poland, to safety, to warm beds and real food." You don't remind him of the hundreds of kilometres still to cover after the river, the Russian armies still pursuing, the winter that shows no sign of relenting. Let him have this hope. Let all of them have it. Hope is as necessary as food or warmth now. As the day wears on, the character of the retreat changes. What was a scattered, disorganised flight becomes more structured, more military. Officers appear, giving orders, directing traffic, organising the masses of men and equipment converging on the river crossing. The Emperor's presence is felt, if not seen. His will imposing order on chaos. His genius finding a way forward where none seemed to exist. By late afternoon you can hear the Berezina, not the sound of water, for the river is mostly frozen, but the sounds of men working, shouting, dying, the crash of axes on wood, the splashing as men wade into the freezing current, the cries of pain as frostbite claims fingers and toes, the crack of muskets as skirmishers hold off Russian probing attacks. You crest a small rise, and there it is, the Berezina, a ribbon of ice and black water cutting across the white landscape. 2 bridges are under construction, one for troops, one for the artillery and wagons that still remain. Men swarm over them like ants, adding planks, lashing logs together, working with desperate energy because they know that these bridges are the only path to survival. Around the bridges, a vast, chaotic encampment spreads out, soldiers from every regiment of the Grande Armée mixed together without regard for unit integrity or chain of command. Campfires dot the area, their smoke rising in thin columns that are quickly dispersed by the wind. Makeshift shelters have been constructed from whatever materials came to hand. Broken wagons, tree branches, even the frozen carcasses of horses arranged to create windbreaks. You lead your men down to this scene of desperate industry, searching for General Eblé as ordered. You find him near the bridges, a tall, imposing figure despite his age, directing the work with the precision of a master engineer. "General," you say, approaching and saluting. Sergeant Dupont, 45th Line, reporting with 27 men as ordered by Captain Renault. Eblé returns your salute absently, his attention on the bridge construction. "The 45th? I thought they were wiped out at Krasnoy." "Nearly, sir. We were detached for flank protection and avoided the main action." The general nods, finally focusing on you and your ragged band. "Your men look half dead, Sergeant." "They are strong enough to do their duty, sir." A ghost of a smile touches Eblé's weathered face. "Well said. Very well. Take your men to the eastern perimeter. Major Gérard is organising the defence there. The Russians will hit us from that direction when they realise what we're doing. You salute again and lead your men to the eastern edge of the encampment, where you find Major Gérard, a young officer with an old man's eyes, positioning what troops he can muster to form a defensive line. "The 45th, he says when you report to him. "I served with your colonel at Wagram, a good man." "Yes, sir. He fell at Borodino, as did so many." The major gestures to a section of the perimeter. "Take position there. We expect Cossacks first, then regular infantry if Tushkov gets his corps here in time. Hold as long as you can. The bridges should be ready by dawn." You position your men as ordered, using fallen trees and snowdrifts to create a semblance of defensive works. There's little enough to work with, and your men are on their last reserves of strength, but they dig and build without complaint. They understand the stakes as well as you do. As darkness falls, fires are lit along the perimeter, not for warmth, though that's a welcome side effect, but to illuminate the approaches so that attacking Russians can be seen. Ammunition is distributed to those who still have functioning weapons. Your men receive 5 cartridges each, a pitifully small amount for what might be a prolonged engagement. Marcel takes position beside you, his musket resting on a log aimed at the darkness beyond the firelight. "So this is it," he says quietly. "The Berezina, the river of death, the river of life," you correct him. "If we cross it." He nods, accepting the correction. "If we cross it." The night deepens, and with it comes the waiting, that terrible nerve-wracking period before battle when imagination conjures 1,000 horrors, when every shadow seems to hold an enemy, when every sound might herald the beginning of the end. But you are a veteran of a dozen battles, a sergeant of the Grand Armée. You've faced Austrian grenadiers, Prussian cavalry, Russian artillery. You've stood your ground when others fled, held the line when all seemed lost. You've survived when thousands died. And tomorrow you will cross the Berezina, or you will die trying. There is no third option, no middle ground. It is as simple and as terrifying as that. Your eyes scan the darkness beyond the firelight, searching for movement, for threats, for the enemy that you know is out there, drawing closer with each passing hour. Your hands check your musket for the 100th time, ensuring that the flint is sharp, the priming pan filled with dry powder, the weapon ready to speak its deadly language when called upon. Beside you, Marcel does the same, his movements a mirror of your own, the product of years of drill and discipline. Beyond him, Pierre keeps watch, despite his injured hands, his aristocratic education forgotten in the simple, brutal necessity of survival. The others, stragglers, survivors, men whose names you barely know but whose lives are now entrusted to your leadership, form a thin line between the encampment and the Russian forces gathering in the darkness. You are the Grande Armée now, not the magnificent force that crossed the Niemen with banners flying and eagles gleaming in the summer sun, but the battered, starving remnant that still calls itself soldiers of France. You have marched across Europe, fought battles that will echo through history, endured what no army should have to endure. And tomorrow you will cross the Berezina, or you will die in its frozen waters, adding your bones to the thousands already marking the long retreat from Moscow. Either way, your march is not yet done. The night is long and dawn is still hours away. Dawn breaks over the Berezina, painting the snow with pale gold light. Your eyes burn from lack of sleep, your muscles ache from tension and cold, but you're still alive. You're still here. The night passed without the expected Russian attack, though Cossack scouts were spotted and driven off by alert pickets. Perhaps the enemy is still gathering their strength. Perhaps they don't yet realize that Napoleon has outfoxed them, building bridges where they didn't expect. Whatever the reason, the reprieve is welcome. The bridges, 2 narrow, rickety structures spanning the half-frozen river, are nearly complete. Already, the first units are crossing, moving with as much discipline as their exhausted state allows. "We'll cross today," you tell Marcel as you stamp your feet, trying to restore circulation to your frost-numbed toes. "We'll cross, and then..." The rest of your sentence is drowned out by the sudden boom of artillery, Russian guns opening fire from the east where the forest meets the open ground. The first rounds fall short, throwing up geysers of snow and mud, but the Russian gunners are finding their range. "Form up!" you shout to your men, who scramble to their feet, grabbing weapons, shedding the blankets they've wrapped themselves in during the night watch. "Prepare to repel infantry!" Where there's artillery, infantry is sure to follow. The Russians will attempt to seize or destroy the bridges, trapping the remainder of the Grande Armée on this side of the river. Major Gérard gallops along the line, his horse, one of the few still alive, looking as gaunt and desperate as its rider. "Hold this position as long as possible," he shouts. The Emperor himself is directing the crossing. Every minute you buy is another 100 men saved. Your men take positions behind the crude defences you constructed yesterday. Logs, broken wagons, mounds of frozen earth, 27 men to hold back what might be thousands of Russians. The odds are impossible, but you faced impossible odds before. A glance over your shoulder shows the chaotic scene at the bridges, a mass of humanity pushing forward, desperate to cross. Soldiers, camp followers, wounded men on improvised stretchers, all funneling toward the narrow wooden structures that represent their only hope of survival. "Look there!" Marcel says, pointing to a small group crossing the near bridge. "The Imperial Guard! And there, in the middle!" You follow his gaze and catch a glimpse of a familiar figure in a grey coat and bicorn hat. Napoleon, the Emperor himself, crossing with his elite troops, ensuring his own escape. A complex mixture of emotions washes over you. Loyalty, betrayal, understanding, bitterness. The Emperor must survive. Without him, France is lost. Yet seeing him leave while thousands of his men are still trapped on this side of the river stirs something dark in your soul. No time to dwell on it. The Russian infantry appears at the forest edge, advancing in good order, their bayonets gleaming in the morning light. Not Cossacks, but regular troops, well-equipped, well-fed, determined to crush what remains of the once mighty Grande Armée. "Hold your fire!" you order as your men raise their muskets. "Wait until they're within 50 paces. Make every shot count." The Russians advance steadily, their officers visible on horseback behind the lines, their drums beating a marching cadence that carries across the snow. 500 men, perhaps more, against your 27. Your mouth is dry, your heart hammering against your ribs. Despite everything you've seen, everything you've survived, fear still finds you in moments like this. Not fear of death, you've made your peace with that long ago, but fear of failure, fear of letting down the men who trust you to lead them. "Steady!" you call as the Russians draw closer. 40 paces, 30. "Ready!" Your men level their muskets, each choosing a target. You hear the soft click of flintlocks being cocked, the rustle of men shifting position for better aim. Fire. 27 muskets roar as one, sending a volley of lead into the advancing Russian ranks. Men fall, their blood staining the snow. Gaps appear in the Russian line, quickly filled as officers shout commands. "Reload," you order, your own hands already moving through the familiar drill. Powder, ball, ramrod. Your men do the same, working as quickly as their cold, numbed fingers allow. But the Russians are closing fast, and not all of your men will be reloaded in time. "Fire at will," you shout. "Make ready with bayonets." Muskets crack individually now as men complete their reloading. More Russians fall, but they keep coming, their superior numbers allowing them to absorb losses that would shatter a smaller unit. The first wave hits your makeshift defences like a human tide. You thrust your bayonet into the chest of a Russian infantryman who looks barely old enough to shave, feeling the sickening resistance as the steel penetrates flesh and bone. He falls back, blood fountaining from the wound, his eyes wide with surprise. No time to think. Another takes his place, thrusting his own bayonet at your face. You parry with your musket, the two weapons clashing with a metallic ring. Beside you, Marcel grapples with a burly Russian sergeant, their breath clouding in the cold air as they struggle for dominance. The world narrows to this moment, this fight, this desperate struggle for survival. You're no longer Sergeant Dupont of the 45th Line Infantry. You're not even French. You're just a man fighting to live another day, to draw another breath, to see another sunrise. A Russian officer appears in the melee, his sabre flashing as he cuts down one of your men. You raise your musket to fire, but the flint fails to spark. Damp powder, the bane of winter warfare. Discarding the useless firearm, you draw your short infantry sword, a weapon you've rarely used in actual combat. The officer sees you coming and turns to meet your charge, his sabre a gleaming arc as it descends toward your head. You parry, the impact jarring your arm to the shoulder. He's stronger than you, better fed, not weakened by months of starvation and exposure. Under normal circumstances, he would cut you down in seconds. But these are not normal circumstances. You are a survivor of the Moscow retreat, a veteran of a dozen battles, a man who has endured what would kill most men 10 times over. You feint left, then drive your sword into the officer's side as he moves to block the feint. He gasps, his eyes widening in shock. You withdraw the blade and thrust again, this time finding his heart. As he falls, you become aware that the fighting around you has changed. The Russians are withdrawing, falling back toward the forest edge, not retreating completely, but regrouping for another assault. You use the brief respite to assess your situation. Of your 27 men, only 16 remain standing. The rest lie dead or wounded among the fallen Russians. Marcel is still with you, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but otherwise intact. Pierre is down, a bayonet wound in his thigh, but still conscious, applying pressure to the injury. "They'll come again," Marcel says, wiping blood from his eyes. "And we won't stop them a second time." You nod, knowing he's right. You've bought minutes, not hours. The next Russian assault will overwhelm your position. Major Gerard appears again, his horse lathered despite the cold. "Fall back to the bridges," he orders. "Take your wounded. Your men have done their duty." You organise the withdrawal, assigning men to help the wounded. Pierre insists he can walk with assistance, leaning on Marcel's shoulder. Others are not so fortunate, requiring makeshift stretchers or the support of 2 comrades. The approach to the bridges has become even more chaotic in the hours since dawn. Thousands of soldiers and civilians press forward, the crowd becoming denser and more desperate as it funnels toward the narrow crossings. Officers try to maintain order, but their commands are lost in the cacophony of voices, the cries of the wounded, the distant thunder of Russian artillery. "Stay together," you shout to your men as you join the press. "Lock arms, don't get separated." Your small band forms a human chain, each man gripping the coat or belt of the man in front, creating a single entity that moves through the crowd like a snake. You're at the head, forcing a path forward, using your sergeant's authority to clear the way where possible, your shoulders and elbows where it's not. The crowd surges and shifts, a living thing with its own terrible momentum. Men who fall are trampled underfoot. Those too weak to keep up are pushed aside. You see a woman clutching a small child, both of them dangerously close to being crushed against a broken wagon. Without thinking, you reach out, pulling them into your group, adding them to your chain of survivors. "Thank you, Sergeant," the woman gasps, her face gaunt with hunger but her eyes still bright. "God bless you." The first bridge is reserved for the Imperial Guard and the artillery, the second for infantry and civilians. Your group joins the mass of humanity funneling towards the latter, moving inch by painful inch. Russian artillery continues to fall around the crossing site, adding to the panic. A shell lands near the entrance to your bridge, sending bodies flying, creating a momentary gap that your group surges into, gaining precious ground. And then you're on the bridge itself, the rough planks swaying beneath your feet, the black waters of the Berezina visible through gaps in the flooring. The structure creaks and groans under the weight of so many bodies, threatening to collapse at any moment. Halfway across, disaster strikes. A Russian shell scores a direct hit on the bridge some 20 meters ahead of you. Planks splinter, ropes snap, and a section of the bridge collapses, sending dozens of screaming men and women into the freezing river below. The crowd recoils from the gap, pressing back against those behind, creating a crush in which breathing becomes difficult. Men at the edges are forced over the side, their cries cut short as they hit the water. "We have to jump it," Marcel shouts in your ear, gesturing to the gap. "It's our only chance." He's right. Going back is impossible against the press of the crowd. Staying here means being crushed or pushed into the river. The gap is perhaps 2 meters wide, a challenging jump under normal circumstances, a potentially fatal one in your weakened state, with the unstable bridge swaying beneath your feet. "Those who can jump, prepare to jump," you order. "The rest will find a way to get you across." You go first, backing up as much as the crowd allows, then sprinting forward, launching yourself across the gap. For a heart-stopping moment, you're airborne, the dark water rushing below. Then your feet hit the planks on the other side, the impact sending pain shooting through your legs. You stumble but stay upright, turning immediately to help others. Marcel follows, making the jump with apparent ease despite his exhaustion. Then comes Francois, who barely clears the gap, his feet landing on the very edge of the planks. You grab his coat, hauling him to safety, but others in your group can't make the jump. The wounded, the woman with her child, those too weak from hunger and cold. They're trapped on the far side of the gap, with the crowd pressing in behind them, pushing them ever closer to the edge. Desperation breeds inspiration. You find a broken wagon shaft, long enough to span the gap. With Marcel's help, you position it across the chasm, creating a narrow, precarious bridge. "One at a time," you shout. "Crawl across, don't stand." Pierre goes first, dragging his wounded leg, moving inch by inch across the makeshift span. He makes it, collapsing on the far side, his face grey with pain and effort. The woman follows, her child clinging to her back. The shaft bends alarmingly under their weight, but holds. More of your wounded make the crossing, each success a small miracle. The last man is halfway across when disaster strikes again. The shaft, weakened by the weight of those who've already crossed, cracks with a sound like a musket shot. The man lunges forward desperately, his hands grasping the edge of the planks as the shaft falls away beneath him. You and Marcel grab his arms, hauling him to safety as his legs dangle over the freezing water. He's the last of your group. All 16 survivors, plus the woman and child, have made it across the gap. The rest of the crossing is a blur of pushing bodies, shouted commands, and the constant thunder of Russian artillery. But finally, mercifully, you reach the far bank. Solid ground, however frozen and inhospitable, feels like salvation beneath your feet. Your group collapses in the snow, gasping for breath, hardly able to believe you've survived. The woman you rescued begins to weep silently, clutching her child to her chest. The boy, no more than 4 or 5 years old, stares at you with solemn eyes that have seen too much for his tender age. "Thank you, Sergeant," the woman says again between sobs. "My husband was with the 24th Light Infantry. He fell at Borodino. I thought we were going to join him today." You nod, unable to find words. So many have died. So many are still dying, even now, on the bridges and in the freezing waters of the Berezina. The lucky ones are shot by Russian bullets or killed by artillery. The unlucky drown slowly, their limbs numbed by the cold, their lungs filling with water as their strength fails. Looking back across the river, you see the Russians have reached the far bank in force. They've set up artillery batteries that pound the bridges relentlessly, turning the crossing into a gauntlet of fire and splintering wood. Still, men continue to push forward, driven by the most basic instinct, survival. "We should move," Marcel says, helping Pierre to his feet. "Put some distance between us and the river. The Russians may yet ford it elsewhere." He's right. The crossing is not the end of your ordeal, merely another step in the long journey home. Gathering your strength, you lead your small band of survivors away from the Berezina, joining the stream of humanity flowing westward toward Vilna, toward Poland, toward France. The days that follow blend together, a nightmare landscape of snow and suffering. Men continue to die from cold, from hunger, from wounds that fester in the filthy conditions. The Russians pursue, but half-heartedly content to let General Winter do most of their work for them. Your group shrinks further. Pierre succumbs to his wound, infection setting in despite your best efforts to keep it clean. 2 others simply fail to wake one morning, their bodies finally surrendering to exhaustion and exposure. The woman, Madame Fournier, you learn, continues with you, her strength and determination a constant source of amazement. Her son, Michel, walks when he can and is carried when he cannot, his small face stoic beyond his years. By the time you reach Vilna in mid-December, only 10 of your original 27 men remain, plus Madame Fournier and Michel. The city offers little sanctuary. It's overwhelmed with retreating French forces, its supplies exhausted, its hospitals overflowing. After a single night under shelter, you continue westward, always westward, toward the Niemen River and the border of Russia. You cross the Niemen on December 30th, 1812, returning to Poland by the same route you entered Russia 6 months earlier. The contrast could not be more stark. Where once a magnificent army marched eastward with banners flying and drums beating, now a stream of ragged spectres limps westward, barely recognizable as soldiers, barely recognizable as human. Of the nearly 500,000 men who invaded Russia under Napoleon's command, fewer than 30,000 return. The rest lie buried in Russian soil, their bones marking the long road from the Niemen to Moscow and back again. Winter turns to spring, spring to summer. Your journey continues through Poland, through Prussia, finally reaching the borders of France in late summer of 1813. Your group has stabilized at 7 men, plus Madame Fournier and Michel. Marcel remains among them. Your friendship forged in fire and ice, stronger than any blood tie. France, when you finally set foot on her soil again, is not the triumphant homeland you remembered. The disaster in Russia has emboldened her enemies. Prussia has risen again, joining with Russia and Austria in a new coalition against Napoleon. British forces under Wellington are pushing northward from Spain. The empire is threatened on all sides. Despite your ordeal, despite everything you've survived, you're still a sergeant in the Grande Armée. You report to the nearest military authorities, expecting to be discharged, to be allowed to return to Lille, to your father's bakery, to peace. Instead, you receive new orders. Napoleon is rebuilding his army, preparing to face the coalition forces in Germany. Experienced veterans are worth their weight in gold. You and Marcel are assigned to the 37th Line Infantry, a regiment being reformed after heavy losses in Russia. It's not what you wanted, not what you expected, but you are a soldier. You follow orders. You do your duty. The campaign of 1813 is a desperate one. Napoleon, his military genius undiminished, wins victories at Lutzen and Bautzen, but they're costly victories, bleeding his new army white. And without cavalry, nearly all the horses died in Russia. He cannot exploit his successes as he once did. Through it all, you fight. At Lutzen, at Bautzen, at Dresden, Marcel remains at your side, as he has been since that first march from the barracks 8 years ago. You both bear the scars of your service, physical scars from wounds received in battle, mental scars from the horrors witnessed during the retreat from Moscow. Then comes Leipzig, the Battle of the Nations. 3 days of carnage that dwarf even Borodino in their scale and bloodshed. The coalition armies outnumber the French 2-1. Despite Napoleon's tactics, despite the valour of his troops, the outcome is never really in doubt. On the 3rd day of battle, your regiment is positioned near the Elster River, covering the French retreat. A coalition battery finds your range, showering your position with case shot, tin canisters filled with musket balls that burst above the target, raining death from above. Marcel falls beside you, multiple wounds tearing through his chest and abdomen. There's nothing to be done. The injuries are too severe, too numerous. He dies in your arms, his last words lost in the thunder of artillery and the screams of the wounded. You have no time to grieve. The order comes to fall back, to cross the Elster before the bridges are destroyed. You leave Marcel's body where it fell, another casualty among tens of thousands, another friend lost to Napoleon's ambitions. The retreat from Leipzig becomes a rout. The coalition forces pursue relentlessly, pushing the battered French army back across the Rhine, back into France itself. Napoleon works miracles with what remains of his forces, winning victories against superior numbers at Brienne, Champaubert, Montmirail. But it's not enough. It's never enough. In April 1814, with coalition armies closing in on Paris, Napoleon abdicates. The war, it seems, is finally over. The Bourbons return to the French throne. Soldiers of the Grande Armée are disbanded, sent home to rebuild their lives after decades of constant warfare. You return to Lille, to your father's bakery, to find much changed. Your father has died, your mother aged beyond recognition by grief and hardship. Your sister Marie, married to the blacksmith's son, has 2 children you've never met. Your younger brother, once apprenticed to a carpenter, was conscripted in 1813 and died at Leipzig, perhaps even in the same battle where Marcel fell. The bakery has been sold to pay debts. There's nothing left of your old life, nothing to return to. You're a veteran without a place, a soldier without a war. For a time, you work as a labourer, your sergeant's skills of little use in peacetime. The work is hard, the pay meagre, but it keeps you fed. At night, you dream of Russia, of the Berezina, of Leipzig. You wake sweating despite the cool night air, reaching for a musket that isn't there. Then, in March 1815, comes the news that changes everything. Napoleon has escaped from Elba. He's landed in France. The army is rallying to him. The Bourbons are fleeing. The Emperor has returned. For 3 days, you wrestle with your conscience, with your memories, with your loyalty. You remember the glory of Austerlitz, the horror of the Berezina, the needless deaths at Leipzig. You remember Marcel, Pierre, François, and countless others who gave their lives for the Emperor's ambitions. In the end, you do not rejoin the colours. You do not march with the Grande Armée on its final campaign. You hear of Waterloo from other veterans, men who followed Napoleon to the last and survived to tell the tale of his final defeat. Instead, you find Madame Fournier and Michel, who have settled in a small village near Lille. She's established a modest seamstress business, supporting herself and her son with needle and thread. You offer your protection, your companionship, your shared memories of that terrible retreat where you saved each other's lives. In time, it becomes more. In 1816, you marry. In 1817, you open a small bakery with money saved from your labours. You teach Michel the trade, just as your father taught you. He grows into a fine young man, strong and steady, without the haunted look that you sometimes see in your own eyes when you glance in a mirror. Years pass, the bakery prospers, your nightmares grow less frequent, though they never entirely disappear. You rarely speak of your experiences in the Grande Armée, but you keep a small wooden box containing your mementos, your sergeant's stripes, the locket with your mother's hair that the old Russians spared, the button from a Russian officer's coat taken at Austerlitz. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, you take out these relics and remember, not the horror, not the suffering, but the camaraderie, the sense of purpose, the feeling of being part of something larger than yourself. You remember Marcel's laugh, Pierre's quiet wisdom, François' unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. In 1840, you hear that Napoleon's remains are being returned to France from St. Helena to be interred with honour in Paris. You're 54 years old now, your hair grey, your once strong baker's hands gnarled with arthritis, but you make the journey to Paris, joining thousands of other veterans who line the route of the funeral procession. As the coffin passes, borne on a magnificent catafalque, you stand at attention and salute, not the returned emperor, but the memory of what you once were, what you all were, the Grande Armée, the soldiers who marched across Europe, who fought at Austerlitz and Jena, at Eylau and Friedland, at Wagram and Borodino. The men who froze and starved and died along the retreat from Moscow. A young boy in the crowd tugs at your sleeve. Were you really one of Napoleon's soldiers, monsieur? You look down at him, seeing something of Michel at that age, something of yourself before war claimed your youth. Yes, you reply simply, I was a sergeant in the 45th Line Infantry. Did you win great victories? Did you kill many enemies? You think of all the answers you could give, the battles won and lost, the men killed by your hand, the suffering endured. But in the end, you simply say, I survived, petite, I survived. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. That night, in your small room at a modest inn, you dream not of Russia, or the Berezina, or Leipzig. You dream of a summer morning in Prussia, the wheat fields golden in the sun, a warm breeze carrying the scent of ripening grain. Marcel is there, and Pierre, and all the others, whole and young and alive. You're marching together, not to battle, but simply forward, always forward, toward a horizon bright with promise. You wake with tears on your cheeks, but a strange peace in your heart. The past is past, the dead are gone, but in memory, in dreams, the Grande Armée still marches, banners flying, eagles gleaming, drums beating the cadence of history. Sergeant Jean Dupont, baker's son from Lille, veteran of Napoleon's Grande Armée, survivor of the retreat from Moscow. Your story is just one among thousands, your experiences just one thread in the vast tapestry of those tumultuous years. But it is your story, your thread, your life, shaped by forces beyond your control, yet ultimately determined by your own courage, your own resilience, your own humanity. You lived in extraordinary times. You saw the rise and fall of empires, the making and unmaking of nations. You marched with the greatest army of your age, served the most brilliant general of his era. You endured what few men could endure and survived what few men could survive. And in the end, you found your way home, not to the home you left, for that was gone forever, but to a new home, a new life built with the same strength and determination that carried you through the frozen wastes of Russia and across the treacherous waters of the Berezina. As you drift back to sleep, your last thought is not of war, but of peace. The simple pleasure of kneading dough, the warmth of the ovens, the smell of fresh bread. The baker's son returned to his true calling at last. Sleep well, Sergeant Dupont, you've earned your rest.